Well done weather effects can contribute a lot to games. They can add immensely to the atmosphere, they can make the world prettier, but the best weather effects are the ones that have an actual impact on the gameplay itself. In this feature, we will talk about 15 games that had such weather effects. Metal Gear Solid 5: The Phantom Pain. Metal Gear Solid 5's emergent sandbox has a ridiculous amount of depth, with multiple systems constantly interacting with each other to deliver some of the most dynamic stealth gameplay we've ever seen. Weather effects are one of the many layers in that complex web. Rainfall and storms can dampen the noise you make, making it easier to sneak around enemy bases, while sandstorms do the same, in addition to also impacting visibility, which impacts the enemies as well as you. Having to adapt strategies on the basis of the weather feels truly rewarding in the Phantom Pain. The Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild. Like the Phantom Pain, Breath of the Wild is yet another emergent sandbox with tons of systems, but weather plays a much bigger role here than in most games. When it rains, climbing surfaces becomes much harder. When you're in snowy areas, eating spicy food or wearing warmer clothes becomes necessary. When you're in the desert, you once again have to dress accordingly under the sweltering heat of the sun. During thunderstorms, carrying anything metallic or wearing metallic armor is pretty much a death sentence, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. Death Stranding. Hideo Kojima really loves integrating weather mechanics in his games, doesn't he? In fact, in Death Stranding, the weather is perhaps the most important system, because every time it rains or snows, rainfall or timefall brings BTs, which means you constantly have to look at weather forecasts and plan your long treks around that. There's also the item deterioration, which is a whole nother thing to keep track of. DRIVECLUB. DRIVECLUB had plenty of issues, but no one can really deny that it was, and still remains, an absolutely beautiful game to look at, especially when you see the storms and rainfall in the game. But the weather effects weren't just pretty to look at. As is the case with most good racing sims, driving and handling mechanics also reacted to wet roads and rainfall significantly. Days Gone. Days Gone is quite different from most Sony first-party exclusives this gen, because more than anything else, it relies on a systemic open world. Weather effects are a huge part of that. Rain and snow do, of course, have an effect on driving the bike, but the freakers also react to weather changes. Rainfall brings them out in greater numbers and makes them stronger, but it also dampens the sound you make. Snow, on the other hand, also makes them stronger, but reduces visibility. Just Cause 4. With Just Cause 4, Avalanche clearly designed the game around its weather mechanics, and very consciously to an exaggerated degree. Hell, that was the main selling point of the game. Insane blizzards, tornadoes, and thunderstorms were all commonly found in the world of Solus, and interacted wonderfully with explosive destruction mechanics. Just Cause 4's weather effects complemented the game's bombastic, over-the-top nature perfectly. Dirt Rally 2.0. Dirt Rally 2.0 isn't the first racing sim we've spoken of in this feature, and it won't be the last. Rainfall and storms impacted gameplay in Codemasters Rally's racing sim pretty significantly. Driving on wet tracks is a thrilling experience as you look for grip that isn't there, while visibility is also affected during overcast weather. Ghost Recon Wildlands. Ghost Recon Wildlands was by no means a perfect game, but it could use its system to great effect during stealth sequences, of which there were no shortage. For instance, thunderstorms and rainfall not only affected visibility as one would think they might, some could also have an effect on your gadgets, adding another wrinkle to stealth. It wasn't as in-depth as, say, the Phantom Pain, but it was definitely a noticeable part of the gameplay when it did rear its head. Animal Crossing: New Horizons. Time in Animal Crossing is real-world time, so even changes from noon to evening feel meaningful. So imagine how meaningful seasonal changes feel. The trees bloom in spring, snow settles everywhere in the winter, and there are major gameplay changes to go hand in hand with that. Which bugs and fish you can find changes, while every season brings completely new and exclusive events. Project Cars 2. Project Cars 2's dynamic weather sounds like an ordinary racing sim weather system on paper, but it really shines in its execution. Snow and rain make roads slippery and change up the handling of every vehicle. Every weather change brings about changes to gameplay that are significantly noticeable. Ace Combat 7: Skies Unknown. Ace Combat 7 makes use of weather systems in really clever ways. For example, during dogfights, you can use cloud cover to your advantage to break line of sight, or even throw off homing missiles targeting. Meanwhile, bad weather can also be a pretty big hurdle for players, with things such as wind, rain, and more all having various effects. Mad Max. Anyone who's seen the Mad Max films will know how insane weather systems in that universe can be, and the game captures that really well. Driving into bad weather systems with exaggerated storms is an absolutely chaotic and equally thrilling experience, one that is as impactful for gameplay as it is visually impressive. It's no surprise that the game is made by Avalanche. Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag. Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag doesn't really make use of weather systems too much when you're on land, but naval combat and exploration are a huge part of the experience, and boy do they benefit from those weather mechanics. Sailing into the middle of storms against furious gales of wind, wild, uncontrollable waves, and dangerous twisters is an absolutely thrilling experience, especially if you're locked in a dramatic battle against other ships while doing so. Sea of Thieves. Sea of Thieves seafaring adventures make spectacular use of weather. Catching the wind and using it for faster sailing is, of course, a thing, but there are also other special kinds of weather effects to contend with. Fog, for instance, makes navigating the seas harder thanks to reduced visibility and increasing the danger of crashing into reefs. Thunderstorms can hit your ship, which can be devastating, while waves that crash into your ship can also do plenty of damage. Meanwhile, when it rains, you have to bail water from the bottom lest it sink. Suffice to say, there's a lot to contend with. Forza Motorsport 7. It's fitting that we're ending this feature with a racing sim, and one that makes use of its weather systems very, very well. Forza Motorsport 7's rain and thunderstorms significantly change how every track looks, sounds, and feels. In fact, even after the storms have ended, the effects still persist, with dynamically formed puddles, for instance, which you have to be aware of while driving your vehicle.
And that wraps it up. If you like what we are doing, please consider subscribing to our channel, and don't forget to switch on the bell notification icon. That way you will never miss out on any of our videos.